You know what diversity? That's the funniest diversity.
Yeah.
Because so in New York, they just basically like I feel like this was kind of like a national story, but sometimes I never know if it's just New York. But either way, it's like New York news kind of is big news.
Yeah.
But so New York and other places have already done this, but essentially they're making body size discrimination illegal and height.
And height.
So
The short kings and the tall kings.
well, why would tall kings get discriminated? Like,
I mean, they're the ones who are the most discriminated against by literally like the structures. Like,
yeah, but I don't.
Dude,
think
I saw like
they're not. No one's like not hiring you because you're too tall.
Maybe.
I don't think people are. Well, maybe as a jockey.
Well, what if you like? I saw. So they did the draft lottery for the NBA, and there's this prospect. His name is Victor Wembanyama or whatever. He's this French dude, and he's 7'5", and he was like at the. You know, they like televise like they're waiting to see what team he's going to go to because he was like the number one pick, and like the place he was hanging out at, he literally had to be like this.
Neck was tilted.
Yeah, he like couldn't like he was touching literally the ceiling.
Right. So
that's discrimination.
But the thing is. That discrimination is never. This is only going to be fat cases. So
yeah, of course.
The thing is that's so funny about this is because I'll just read the thing. Adam signed a controversial bill outlining discrimination based on weight and height and in housing and public accommodation. So again, like. This is out of the gate. You're just like, well, why would there be discrimination in like housing where you go, hey, we're going to give you public housing, and you're just like, you're not going to fit through the door, sister. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine that's been a problem where you get discriminated against to get housing. It's obviously what they mean is at a workplace, right?
Yeah.
So this is, you know who this is?
No, it'll be housing too.
This is lawyers ringing the cashier.
Oh yeah.
Right now, if you work for whatever Steinberg and Bergstein.
Yep.
Just
two white guys, just a two white guy law firm.
Two white guy law firm for whatchamacallit? What's this law called? Workplace discrimination law. Yeah. Like, and that's what kind of everyone's saying. It's like this is just going to be like a free for all.
Yep.
It's Christmas. Because how would you possibly? Okay, first of all, this is the only discrimination where they go any other thing, right? Because all they can do is basically because everyone would say they go, oh, we don't discriminate, but they're like, what they're saying in the article is like. Yeah, it's going to go one step further than that. If you get fired and you don't get the job, and then we look at your 20 employees and none of them are fat, we'll be like, the same as you can.
Yeah, could you not have found a fat person who was equally qualified?
So if you have 100 people at your job and you're like, we didn't discriminate against black people, and you go, hey, have you never hired a black person? So they can get you on that, right?
Sure, especially if one applies.
But it's the only discrimination that can be solved by putting pie in the break room.
Or you do the phone call only interviews, no in-person interviews. Just they're always via phone. So then you're like, well, Your Honor, my client sounds fat.
Yeah, they're just like,
clearly, Your Honor, my client sounds fat, and they knew that on the phone.
Listen back to the call. I think we can all.
I'd like to work here.
Sorry, I just had to go up a 2-stair set. I'm gonna need a lot of days off for starters. So tell us a bit about yourself. I actually like to ask some questions first. What time's lunch?
Yeah, what's allowed to be discussed and what's not allowed to be discussed around the gravy cooler? Did you say gravy cooler?
We don't actually have a gravy cooler. My lawyers will be in touch.
He'll be here.
Click.
It's crazy too. This article says this year New York City could become one of the largest cities in the world to make it against the law to deny fat people the same rights that thinner people enjoy. It's like the trans stuff. You're like, what rights do you not have?
I really don't get
what
this
right.
one.
Like when they say rights, you're like, what rights do you not have?
No, this one's crazy because what's going to happen is this is going to be someone's job, basically, right? So someone's job in the government is going to be like going around to workplaces, make sure they have enough fat people. Can you imagine like the diversity person, the fat diversity person is like coming into the office and the boss is like freaking out. Like he's like, Danny, what the fuck? You put on 5 pounds? Like,
what are you doing to me? Yeah, like the companies will have like they'll have like the weight loss thing, like because it'll bring down their insurance premiums. Like that's out the window.
Oh, your boss is turning into the friggin' the big bad wolf, like coming in trying to fatten everyone up because the diversity.
We got a Krispy Kreme sponsorship, everybody.
Well, yeah, because you're gonna have a fat check coming in. It's like also the diversity corner, but it's just like like obviously in certain fields where it's like obvious the girls got hired for that. It's like people people will be like, oh, it's a diversity hire.
Yeah.
Like, you know how funny that just be like, just be a fat guy and just like a diversity hire, and they have just like one room in the office where they have like the fat people for diversity. They don't really do a whole lot. It is really like, it is like such a crazy thing. So basically, and then they bring the boss in, and then they have the workplace discrimination lawyer, and he's just like, boss is like, you know what? I don't see size. I just hired the best person for the job. And he's like, what do you think of this fat woman? He's like, oh, yeah. I mean, beautiful. They're just showing him photos of like fat people, and he's just like, ugh. She goes, would you say this person's a hardworking person or a lazy person? He goes, I can't tell.
I mean, I wouldn't know how you could tell based on just photos.
I wouldn't know. What about this one? They're just in the mobility scooter. He's like, I can't. There's no way for me to tell.
Soon they're going to be going after, like, look, here's a photo of all 500 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Not a 500-pounder in the lot. Explain that. We need more fat representation.
Yeah, but it's the hardest one because so all this is a field day for lawyers.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
I was in
an unwinnable game. You're like, it's a further thing that just makes it like people.
I feel like it's only going to be girls too. You're not going to see a lot of this with guys.
No.
Girls have the perfect system rigged out where they go when if guys have like if guys aren't body positive, they're like bigots. If girls aren't body positive, they call it standards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Like they really sold their thing. I was saying that I would say that I don't know if I'm body positive, but when I get about 8-9 drinks in me, I start to get a little pretty. fair to say 3 a.m. at the bar. You know, I've been known to get a little body positive.
A bit of an ally. Once the bar's about to let out, and
then the weirdest thing,
want to go home alone.
Weirdest thing after we smash, now I get a lot less body positive. Yeah. The body positivity fleets away.
Yeah, I get a little. Little discriminatory.
Yeah, I just get cracked. I get, but like 8 drinks, I start to get, pretty body positive. 12 drinks, I'm a friggin' ally and a half. You know what I mean?
Let's march, sisters.
Yeah, you get me 16. You get me 16 beers to drink. I get a job at Vice. You know what I mean? You get real body positive around that 16 beer mark.
Yeah, that's like, you think people are going to try and get ahead of this too and like start being like, okay, we need to like some like strategy meeting at a company. They're coming after us.
We're going to have to start feeding people.
Yeah. That is funny because you can't make people a different race, but you can trick them into getting fatter.
Exactly. So you basically, it's the funniest part. You're like a company that's like 10 white men and you're just like, you don't want to do all this stuff. And they're like, listen, like we're getting in trouble. Someone here's got to volunteer to put on 25 like it's a movie role.
Yeah, that is but that's honestly not like a movie role. That is like the premise of like a fucking movie. Like they all have to get fatter by July 1st, otherwise they're getting fired.
They're gonna get sued for millions because that's what happens. They have like a big class action lawsuit that's gonna bankrupt the company, but if the staff all gets fat, they're gonna go on the stand and they're gonna be like, the top ranking members are going on the stand.
No, it's like
they have 3 weeks to put on 80 pounds.
Yeah, it's like the diversity enforcement guy comes in, he goes, just a bunch of skinny people here. I'll be back in 3 months.
And if
something better changed, otherwise you're going to all be looking for new jobs, okay? Koosh.
That's good. Like, how else would it happen, though? It's just like such a recipe for calamity, this whole thing. A lot of people do have. I know different people that have like owned companies that have said like they'll say things like I don't hire smokers or whatever, but they all have like the same. You all basically have like techniques to not hire them. You can't because they know that you can't say I won't hire smokers, but they just know.
I just don't hire people with yellow fingertips.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, smokers is the biggest scam. That's like legitimately, you're like, yeah, I smoke, so that means I just take all these unpaid breaks that we somehow allow because I smoke, and you go, what? Yeah.
That's kind of what it. That's what.
I mean, it's insane. No, you wouldn't let other people take that amount of breaks.
Also, it's like there's certain jobs where it's going to smell like smoke and people don't like that and stuff. There's just like, but there's also more just like when someone's 45. I think people do these like whatever you call it discrimination or some people call it averages. If you said like CEOs like what percentage of them smoke or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a little different now with all the vaping and stuff like that, but. But the same thing is this. I think people have done these studies where they go, what percentage of, high performance athletes are like 400 pounds?
Yeah,
what I mean?
Exactly.
Of course, right?
Yeah. CEOs are generally high performing individuals, so you're not going to.
Well, they have jobs for people that are 400 pounds. The DMV.
The post office.
They
exist.
It's just such a weird thing because you're one of those things where you go, especially for like, cashier or whatever, all these jobs. It was like, yeah. it's not good to just like not give someone a chance because they're big or whatever. But at the same time, you're just like, how would this ever play? How would you play this thing out in a way that's not going to be a calamity?
Oh yeah, well again, it's similar to the race stuff where you're like it's so hard to prove, right? Because you know, I guess is what happens is you go, well, you hired someone who's like way less qualified than me. And so the only difference is that I was 400 pounds and they're not.
That's kind of where it's, and you're like, no, the difference was his friend was my buddy. You know what I mean?
Well, whatever. But then, yeah, you're still not allowed to do that either.
Well, it's the first thing it's already playing out on is basically they started playing it out on like Broadway and stuff like that. Because it's all this stuff is going to get to those jobs where it's not a real job first. And basically they've already. Yeah, exactly. They've already started to like weasel into like Broadway's already having like a big conversation about that where it's like, you know, they're not more. Well, you need more.
The ballet needs more fat people. That's for sure. They're all wiry.
I actually would be more likely to watch that.
Fat ballet.
I actually would watch that way more.
I don't want them all to be fat though. I just want like a couple.
I have zero interest in the ballet. But if you told me it was like the plus size ballet, I'm back in. So much more. It's kind of like when people talk about the trans league sports. Like you would do it. So I would be interested in that.
I think so.